I have never had it on my bucket list to do a TEDx talk. And yet here I am. So I've written it on the list and I've crossed it off, because you've got to get your dopamine where you can. Equally, I have never had it on my bucket list to own a football club, an English professional league football club. And yet here I am. So I put that on my list and I've crossed that off as well, and that was a lot of dopamine. What I want to do now in these few minutes is to give you a little insight into what led this outwardly looking sane person to go ahead and buy a football club in Stoke-on-Trent. So, I was born in 1957. I know, it's surprising, but I was. I was born in 1957, and so my formative years in business were the end of the 70s and the beginning of the 80s. Now, during that time, there was high employment. We're in an industrial age in this city and in many cities, well, most cities around the country. If you wanted a job, you could get a job. And when you got one, you worked for a company, whether it's in the public sector or a farm or a company, and they would look after you as people, not just as resource. So there were sports departments, welfare departments, there were everything. I remember with my mom, she worked for GEC, and we as children all got taken to the pantomime at Christmas. We had a selection box and a Kia orange. And you know, I'm 67 and I still remember it 60 years ago. And an ice cream if you were good at, I nearly said half time, but interval. And so that's how people were looked after. And then in the 80s, the world turned on its axis. And suddenly, money was the thing, not people. That wasn't the main driver anymore. It was money, profit, getting the profit, squeezing the asset. And so suddenly, people weren't looked after. Human resource departments sprang up. And you all became about what you did, not who you are. And then they found that what you did could be done cheaper elsewhere, so jobs disappeared. But during that time, Kevin and I met Kevin in 1979, and we looked after a big client, British Leyland, because we used to make cars in the UK. And they had thousands and thousands of employees. And our view, because we both felt the way of looking after people was the right way. We felt that if we looked after our client and our client really wanted to do business with us, then they would, and we would get more business, and we did. So when it gets to 1992, by this time we have boiled ourselves up into a frenzy about, this is the way that people should be looked after and this is the way that companies could be run. So by this point, we are unemployable. We are gobby. We are opinionated. We do not want to put up with this money-driven sort of society. And we wanted to show, or prove, if we could, that it didn't have to be that way. That you could have a company and you could employ people. Mums, dads, brothers, sisters, fishermen, walkers, football players, cricketers, whatever they were, that we would employ people, and people who happened to be, whether it was developers or who it was. Our clients, again, we would treat them as people. I'm a big one about food, so we fed people. Because back in the day, there used to be tea ladies everywhere, and there used to be canteens everywhere. And so we had tea ladies. And there's nothing sexist in that. It's just we only had one man once, and he lasted 2 days, and he ran to the hills. So tea ladies was appropriate in our case. And they've been brilliant. They were the lifeblood of Synectics, our company, because they went and took everybody a drink. They could look in their face and see if they were okay. And sometimes you'd say, I'm not sure so-and-so's all right, it looks really sad. And then you could go and see if they were all right. So they weren't spies. I mean, that sounds a bit terrible the way I've just phrased it, but, they were there. They were connecting with everybody who was there. And so the company grew. And it grew, and it grew, and it grew, till in the end we had 3 big offices, but we'd outgrown those. And we wanted one office for everybody to go into. And we found that office, and it's in Burslem. Now, you guys in this room know where Burslem is, But people who are watching this talk, maybe later on, when I'm viral and global, they're not going to know who Burslem is. So let me tell you, Burslem is one of the 6 towns that make up the city of Stoke-on-Trent. And believe it or not, guys, there's going to be people out there who say they've never heard of Stoke-on-Trent. And we know that they will have experienced Stoke-on-Trent, because they will have eaten from a plate, they will have eaten from a bowl, drunk from a cup, drunk from a mug that was made here in the centre of the ceramics industry in Stoke-on-Trent. We know that. But we also know that the time came where the ceramics industry moved. It moved far east. It moved to cheaper produce, not as good produce, because people decided that they would put up with it being worse if it was cheaper. So one of the reasons that Stoke-on-Trent became the centre of the ceramics industry was because of the access to coal. There were coal mines all around here. So there were miners and there were mining communities. There was the steel works and the whole community around there. So families around here would be the pits or the pots. They'd come home covered in clay or they'd come home covered in coal dust, which is probably why Black and White ended up being the best football club in Stoke-on-Trent, but we'll come back to that. So Stoke-on-Trent is then the place where we are. We have moved our 360 people to Burslem. And when we got there, we found this whole community that had lost its reason that it came together in the first place, which was its employment. And with that, it lost a lot of the heart. And so I started to do some work in the community. We started to feed disadvantaged kids in the school holidays. We gave them food and activities to do, and really became involved in the needs of the area. Now, the office we found is next door to Vale Park. Vale Park, otherwise known as the Wembley of the North, is the home of Port Vale Football Club. Now, Port Vale Football Club is known for a few things. One, it's one of the only clubs in the country that's not named after the town where it is. Mind you, we do have a valley of ports on the canal, so there's a bit of a tenuous connection, but we are Port Vale, and we are also known for having one famous fan in Robbie Williams, and who is a fan and is involved, but not financially, don't believe the papers. The other thing that Port Vale was known about was never fulfilling its potential, its full potential. So in the 4 top tiers of football, it had a little soiree into the tier 2, but it had really just pendulumed between tier 3 and tier 4 over the years. It had also been really poorly managed. I don't mean on the pitch, I mean as a club. And it had really struggled, almost in parallel with the area. So I said to Kevin, do you know what? If we really, really want to help this area, if we really believe in what we're talking about, we will go and make Port Vale successful using the values and the systems in which we grew Synectics. And he said, how on earth are we going to do that? I said, I ain't got a clue. I ain't got a clue, but it can't be hard. Can't be hard. It is hard. We bought this football club. Everybody told us not to. The lawyers, everybody said, don't do it. Why would you not buy a football club in England? Well, the old saying is, how do you want to make a small fortune? You start with a large fortune and you buy an English football club. Believe you me, that's true. But we bought it and we got in there and it was broken. And the whole feeling was that the good times had happened. There was and I wanted to show, no, come on, the good times are now or they're tomorrow. We're building towards them. And so we get into the first season, lockdown. Not helpful, season stops. And so we come together as a club and we get the kitchens going, we get everybody going, and we deliver 375,000 meals around Stoke-on-Trent. It was absolutely phenomenal. And I don't think there's many other sorts of organisations that could do that other than a football club. Next season, we're behind closed doors. It was absolutely horrible. The season after, we have a new manager. Well, we have a manager for a year, and he had a really bad family tragedy. And when you're working with a person that's had a family tragedy, it permeates around the whole organisation. You all get into that point of grief, that point of really wanting to support them, but it taps into stuff yourself, and it did for the whole club. But it also can motivate, and you'll go, yeah, I'm going to show it, I'm going to do something about this. And we went to Wembley and we got promoted. And everybody said, that's amazing. And I'm thinking, oh no, it's not, because we're really not ready. But we've just done this on this curve of emotion. So we get up to League One, and we're really not ready. And then you have the 2 seasons of come down of that sort of level of emotion. And eventually I get to a point of saying, look, I've got to get another manager. And so, you know, for an industry that really isn't about people, everything that I've always wanted to be, football isn't, but I still want to treat people as people. So I want to have a manager that feels the same. So I go after a championship level manager, because if you want to build your organisation to a certain point, go and employ somebody at that certain point, because they know what it's like when they get there. They also know what it's like to get there. So I said, I want Darren Moore, championship manager. People said, you can't have Darren Moore. He's a championship manager. I said, I know. It's audacious, isn't it? Get him on the phone. So we did, and we had this 2-hour conversation. Now, we both, as children, came from near West Bromwich Albion, so we had a connection. We both got the 79 bus to go and watch the Wolves, and that kind of connects people, when you catch the 79 bus to go and watch the Wolves. And so he came, and I brought in the best CEO that I could find, which was Matt Hancock, not that one. He very unfortunately had a politician who was dreadful at the same time. In fact, the day that he joined us, I introduced him to everybody, and at no point did I say his surname. This is Matt. And he is the acceptable face of Matt Hancock. He's brilliant. And so then, this year, we got relegated. It was hard, it was horrible, it hurt. But you also had this sense that actually, going back a step, sometimes you've got to go back to come forward. And we went back, and we took every single department of that football club, everyone, whether it's media or medical or strength and conditioning, or not just the first team, and we said, how can we be the best that we can be? What can we do to grow it? Forget what everybody else does. I don't care what every other football club does, because I don't like a lot of the way a lot of them run. I want ours to be to our value set. We share the same values, we share the same ambitions. Now let's put that onto the football pitch. And we went ahead, and we did really well for half a season, then we had a dip. Now, most people, when they have a dip, fire the manager. Why would I fire the best manager that I could have possibly found? Never crossed my mind. But we got together halfway through the season. I said, right, now let's have a look at the first half of the season. Let's have a look at every system that we put into place. And we've stress tested it. And let's see what needs fixing, what needs replacing, what needs leaving alone. And then let's go into the second half of the season. And then we went on a run of wins. So I kept saying, it was the meeting that did it. It wasn't the meeting that did it. It was the real hard work of everybody. But as a club, we became so intense that we were going to do this. We were going to get promoted. I mean, at one level, we're only getting back to where we were, but we're not only getting back to where we were, because we've now got solid foundations, solid roots. And so our adventure into the unknown has now taken us into a baseline in where we can start to look forward. How did you do? You're all saying it, I know. I've got one slide only, and I'd like you to see my one slide. No words, well there's one word on it. The one word is promoted. And I showed my husband it this morning, and I did have to point out, I didn't have that much joy on my face on the wedding photograph. That is, what you see there is that outpouring of emotion that we've done it, that we did what we set out to do. We came second, we didn't come first, we didn't set out to come first, we'd have set out to have come first, we'd have come first. We didn't. We set out to have got promoted, and that's what we've done. So next season, we go into League Two, we leave League Two, we go into League One, we're ready, we're excited, and we're going to go into the next adventure into the unknown. And I'll have to come back in another year and tell you how we got on. But in the meantime, up the Vale.